blah 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 blah.
Welcome to Magic Fest Los Angeles, and we got something special for you today.
Pauper.
Joseph, now going to float mana and snap again here. Oh, snapping the Stormbound Geist this time. Untapping 2 lands. And using the mana floating, casting Deep Analysis, and it is just disgusting what's going on here.
Well, I didn't quite get a Pauper GP, but the Mythic Championship qualifier held at Magic Fest Los Angeles last weekend with commentary by LSV and Huey Jensen was still beyond amazing and very close to fulfilling the prophecy of my original tweet over 1 year ago. The fact that someone is going all the way to the Pro Tour / Mythic Championship London thanks to Pauper is just beyond exciting for me and for the format. But this isn't the Pauper format we knew only 1 year ago. It's changed dramatically in ways I don't think people fully realize. A lot has happened in Pauper thanks to its popularity. But thankfully, what has ended are things that I am glad are gone. Misconceptions and fallacies about the format. With Modern Horizons coming towards us, a set that is highly likely to be stuffed with downshifted cards and possibly the fabled Oubliette reprint, let us take a moment to go over the ways that Pauper, as we knew it, has died since it exploded on the GP scene a year ago. Pauper will become too expensive. This nonsense was always looming long before daily Pauper side events were added at all Grand Prix and Magic Fests. Pauper, after all, is known as the affordable budget format, so if it explodes in popularity, then surely those card prices will skyrocket, right? Wrong. So despite an initial surge on a few key Pauper cards, decks never really broke $100 each. Now, I know what you're saying. $100 for a Pauper deck? Outrage! Yes, for Pauper, those prices were high, but it was still the most budget format by far. When $100 won't even get you a playset of Scalding Tarns, it won't even get you half a standard deck, to have it get you a complete Legacy Light deck that never rotates is yours forever, it still maintains Pauper as extremely budget-friendly compared to literally the rest of constructed MTG formats. Nothing else even comes close. And prices did not stay that high for long. MTG Finance could never fully capitalize on commons. There's just too many of them, and a single reprint of any one of them will plummet prices. In fact, cards like Oubliette are actually selling for less now than they were before Pauper's surge in popularity, largely because both Gavin Verhey and Mark Rosewater have confirmed that a reprint is coming. They know where it is going and that it's in the works. It's going to happen. And these are just a few of the ways that Pauper is always going to be budget. Oh, and those $100 Pauper decks, it didn't hold either. Looking at a huge swath of the current Pauper metagame, only 2 decks are at $100, and the rest are not only under that price, but under it by a lot. There's a plethora of $50 decks to choose from. And when you compare this to the modern meta, where decks are in the thousands of dollars range and budget decks are going to cost $400 to $500 and there's only 1 to 2 of them, well, then you can see why I feel very confident that this idea that Pauper will no longer be the budget format is finally over and at an end. It's been long enough, and it's still the budget format. And I think that is in no small part due to the diversity of Pauper decks available in the format, which brings us to the next concept about Pauper that is now over. Competitive Pauper will be all blue and Delver decks. Let's be honest, Pauper right now is having a kind of civil war within itself, but unlike Captain America's Civil War, the reasons for this inner conflict actually make a bit of sense. The argument is over whether or not cards like Gush and Foil need to be banned to help diversify the meta, and there's been a lot of very passionate arguments on both sides. And even if you don't think Gush or Foil needs to be banned, it is fair to say that Blue not only has always been one of the stronger builds in Pauper, probably the strongest, but also to acknowledge that, yeah, it certainly is very, very dominant right now in particular. And yet, despite this, Pauper still allows for everything from a diverse meta to other color strategies to even homebrews and rogue decks. At the Pauper MCQ, we saw a top 8 that was 8 different decks. Yeah, you absolutely can say this wasn't a large enough event to fully draw conclusions from, and that you need larger and more accurate pools of data if you want to truly talk about blue potential need for a banning. Absolutely, okay? I'll give you that. But what I do think it is fair to point to is that this, the biggest competitive event Pauper has ever had a top 8 that was this diverse, and that we can say Pauper is a format where this can happen. We even had a homebrew in the top 8. The deck Oops All Spells is brand new to the format. Can you imagine that happening in any other format? Someone just throwing together a deck for a GP and then making top 8 with it? Well, it happened last weekend in Pauper.
We're here at Magic Fest LA with Stephen, who's playing Oops All Instance. Stephen, what is this deck? Where did it come from?
So basically, my favorite thing to do in general is play do-nothing blue decks that just kind of counter all your spells and wait to maybe resolve a threat if you feel like it, and that's pretty much what this deck does.
And that deck was just one of 8 different top 8 decks. Yet there was Delver, there was also Burn, Tron, Tortured Existence, which is a deck I've teched, Modern Black Zombies, which is another deck I have teched, Familiars, which is a combo deck, and the winner? Bogles. Blue is always powerful in all formats, and maybe it could use a ban in Pauper right now. But even if so, this showing, as well as those from the now hundreds of GP side events, demonstrate that competitive Pauper is not all blue and Delver decks. There's variety still. There's choice. Play what you love. Homebrew if you like. Players are not interested in watching Pauper. Another weird misconception that I felt got put to rest half a decade ago when the Community Super League did a Pauper week, and that episode was overwhelmingly the highest rated of the entire event. But still the naysayers feared people just aren't going to tune in and watch Pauper. Well, the stream for the Pauper Top 8 broke 10,000 viewers, having nearly double the viewership of Star City Games, which was streaming up against the event. Again, there is a lot of complexity that goes into why an event's numbers are good, but 10,000 is monumental for a GP by itself. Remember, Magic GPs usually lose to Star City Games coverage, and here a simple Pauper MCQ broke 10K viewership. People are interested and excited in watching Pauper. There's not enough Pauper players. Well, from nearly 200 MCQ players on Saturday's event, and that was an event running up against the Grand Prix main event, by the way, to the well over 300 last year at GP London on a Sunday afternoon, the fact that every GP every weekend now has daily Pauper events is not just that they fire, but that they have great numbers. Look, Channel Fireball is ultimately a business, and no business would be running these Pauper events this highly, this heavily, this frequently if it wasn't profitable for them. And that's the same reason why you rarely, if ever, see brawl events. Sorry, but it's true. Players want to play Pauper, and they are every single weekend that there's a GP. Which brings us to the one final misconception about the format that I think will now finally die, or at least will do so soon. Wizards of the Coast can't monetize Pauper. You can monetize anything if you go about it right. But just because Pauper is the format of all commons does not mean it can't be monetized. As I said earlier, Modern Horizons is expected to have an amazing package of cards for Pauper. From downshifts to probably much needed reprints, Pauper allows you to make special sets stronger and increases sales simply through the virtue of having more value for more and more players at levels other than Mythic and Rare. By including Pauper reprints and downshifts, you make a pack of Magic cards worth more to more people. Make it so it isn't just the rare or Mythic that someone rips open a pack to get at. strengthening your product and the desire for that product from your consumer base. Also, there's potential Pauper pre-constructed products as well. I discussed this myself when I talked about the possibility of Pauper event decks, a video that well may be a foreshadowing of things to come. Pauper has survived the test of time on the fringes and is now hopefully taking its place as a legitimate and widely played Magic format. In doing so, I think it is fair to say Pauper, as we knew it, is dead. And what Pauper is today in Magic the Gathering is something bigger, something better. Pauper is stronger now than it ever was, and it's still growing every day.
Jensen, we just walked you through an entire top 8 of the Pauper Mythic Championship qualifier.
It was pretty fun.
It was pretty fun. The Muldrifter count was well in the 30s, I think.
At least.
if not more.
Yeah.
And it was pretty awesome to get to cover Pauper at kind of like a big stage. So
I agree.
That was very sweet.
We have our final top 8 MCQ player.
I did not make top 8. I didn't make top 8.
Why are you here? Do you have a YouTube channel?
Who doesn't have a YouTube channel? Except you.
Unfortunately, my co-host from Dice Removal is here to talk about a Pauper, and I'm contractually obliged to talk to him about it. So, Professor, what are you playing and why?
I am playing Pauper Affinity, and here's something really cool about Pauper Affinity. It's what I like. It's a weird thing about the deck, but unlike Affinity in Modern, unlike Affinity in Legacy, unlike Affinity pretty much anywhere else, Pauper Affinity runs, wait for it, actual Affinity cards.
Can you name any of them without turning around?
Yes, Frogmite, Thoughtcast, Mirror Enforcer.
That's not on the screen, but that's good.
Yep. And this program was made possible thanks to a sponsorship from Card Kingdom, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. So thank you.